Hello everyone and welcome back to Chanakya Online Companion. In today's video, we will have a detailed explanation of chapter Respiration of ICSE Class 9. In this chapter, we will cover aerobic and anaerobic respiration in plants and various experiments that are performed to show that respiration takes place in seeds and plants. So without any further delay, let us move ahead. Respiration is a catabolic process. Actually, catabolic means the breakdown of bigger molecules into smaller particles by releasing energy. It is a catabolic process and it is actually the stepwise oxidation of glucose that takes place slowly, and it occurs only in the living cells. You must have seen that the production of carbon dioxide and water takes place in the plants so that they can use it for further cellular respiration. Okay, right? So respiration in every creature is not the same. It can be further classified into two parts. First one is aerobic respiration and the next one is anaerobic. Now let me tell you one thing. There are some bacteria which when come in contact with oxygen, they die immediately. So for those who do not respire using oxygen, they respire using this process, that is anaerobic respiration. They respire anaerobically. Tiny creatures like bacteria and yeast respire anaerobically. Even some plants do, and the other creatures respire aerobically. Now, what is so different in these? Writing the chemical equation for glucose, C6H12O6. When glucose along with oxygen is used, then 6CO2 plus 6H2O along with 38 ATP is formed. And this is the chemical reaction for aerobic respiration. So the breakdown of glucose using oxygen forms carbon dioxide, water and 38 ATP, and this is actually aerobic respiration. What you need to mention in this definition is that it occurs in the presence of oxygen. Alright, now let's see anaerobic respiration. What occurs there? It is anaerobic respiration. So C6H12O6, that is the same thing. Again, here also we are using glucose. We will not involve oxygen here, but because it is not used, then it forms ethyl alcohol. I want you to learn the chemical equation of ethyl alcohol. So 2C2H5OH is ethyl alcohol. Okay. Now let us go further with this. Aerobic respiration is the complete breakdown of glucose to form carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now, how does this take place? So it does not take place so sudden. It has steps, some steps. Here actually two steps takes place. First one is glycolysis. What is glycolysis? It is the first phase of the breakdown of glucose. Is glycolysis, you can understand that it is involved with glucose, that is the breakdown of glucose. Now, glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm. When glycolysis occurs, it produces, or say it turns the glucose into pyruvate and releases energy of about 2 ATP. So this is the process of glycolysis which takes place in the cytoplasm, producing pyruvate along with 2 ATP energy. Moving further with aerobic respiration, this 2 ATP is used for cellular respiration. So it is the first phase. Alright, let's recall. Glycolysis is the first phase of the breakdown of glucose which takes place in the cytoplasm, producing pyruvate along with 2 ATP. It is the main pathway for cellular respiration because it produces energy. So now we see when glycolysis occurs, this is the product. Is it the same here? Is it the same, like the 2 ATP is produced here? Is here also 2 ATP? Are the same products? No, it's absolutely not. Again, one process takes place, and that is Krebs cycle. In junior classes, you must have heard that mitochondria is the site of respiration. The same thing we are going to talk here. Here, the Krebs cycle takes place in the mitochondria. When this process takes place, what will happen to pyruvate and ATP? Now, when this occurs, the metabolites will be interconverted to release energy. And finally, 38 ATP will be released. In Krebs cycle, this thing along with oxygen is further converted to the end products here. Okay? So this is the final pathway. Anaerobic respiration. Right now we discussed what is glycolysis. Glycolysis is the first phase of breakdown of glucose in which the incomplete breakdown of glucose takes place. Now in aerobic respiration, the first process is glycolysis. So same thing occurs when here is no oxygen. Then glycolysis even does not require using oxygen, right? So this will be converted to pyruvate along with 2 ATP. So when glucose goes through the glycolysis process, it is converted into pyruvic acid. Now pyruvic acid, you should know one thing, that there are 3 carbon compounds. 3 carbon compounds that are into 3. Now let's see. Can you see 2C here containing 2? The same thing is also here, and the same also here. We're talking about carbon. We don't need to talk about carbon dioxide because we are listing carbon here. Carbon. Next, as we move further, then using the next process, this process, lactic acid fermentation takes place. And what is fermentation? Fermentation is a type of anaerobic respiration in which the end products are ethyl alcohol and CO2. So these are the 2 processes to mention. Okay, let's come further with this. The first difference is oxygen. What is the second difference? When you see that here carbon dioxide along with water is formed, and there ethyl alcohol along with 2 CO2 is formed, that is the difference, the end product. Isn't it? What are the similarities? The reactant, the respiratory substrate, glucose. So, reactant. Next we have, can you please spot that? That is ATP. ATP. Is not it? ATP. What is ATP? What is ATP? ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Due to the usage of oxygen, 38 ATP are formed. I have 2 questions to ask you. What is the respiratory substrate? the respiratory substrate, this thing. So the respiratory substrate, try to guess, it is glucose. The glucose is respiratory substrate. Is oxygen released during respiration? No, of course not. It is not released. It is used but not released. Let us move further to discuss glycolysis and Krebs cycle a bit clearly. Aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration are both kinds of respiration, and these two respiration take place in the plants. But how do they do? When oxygen is used for respiration, then it is aerobic respiration. But when no oxygen is used, then just glucose is used, that is C6H12 plus here O6, okay, and oxygen along with the glucose here. So don't be confused that only aerobic respiration takes place in the plants. Anaerobic and aerobic both take place in the plants. Okay, so let us discuss these two topics in detail. Glycolysis, we have already known that it is the first phase. Since it is the first phase, so it is present in all living organisms. All living organisms, whether it's you, any dog, any plant, any bacteria, or whatever. Okay, so it is the first phase that takes place in the cytoplasm. Just keep in mind that energy is released. Energy is released that is used for cellular metabolism. Since we have mentioned, so it is present in all living organisms. All living organisms. Okay, so glycolysis is the incomplete breakdown of glucose that takes place in the cytoplasm, releasing energy which is further used for cellular metabolism, and this is the first phase and also the main pathway for glucose breakdown, because the energy is released here which is used further for cellular metabolism. When we talk about Krebs cycle, it occurs only in aerobic respiration. Like, we cannot directly say that it is present in all living organisms, but those organisms which respire aerobically. You have known that plants are there, they also respire aerobically. Krebs cycle occurs, sometimes Krebs cycle does not occur. Why does not this take place in anaerobic respiration? Why does it take place in aerobic respiration? Because here it occurs in the presence of oxygen. Oxygen is used for this purpose. When you see anaerobic respiration, you won't see any molecule of oxygen, right? So this is the main difference. Moving on further, the final phase occurring in the mitochondria in the presence of oxygen is Krebs cycle. And always remember that it occurs in each body cells. Like here, the energy is used for cellular respiration. What occurs here? It takes place to generate energy. Alright, now let us discuss the diagrams of aerobic respiration. So these two things in the process of glycolysis. Now here you see, this is actually mitochondria. Mitochondria. This is Krebs cycle, and always remember that Krebs cycle takes place all the time in the cell. In Krebs cycle, these two things will be converted into CO2. CO2. Then there will be actually here the chemical energy will be transferred and one electron transport system. When this occurs, it uses oxygen. On using oxygen, 36 ATP is produced. H2O is also produced. Okay, so anaerobic respiration. Here the same thing, the same process occurs, glycolysis. Next step, always remember 2 energy, 2 ATP, 2 energy in the form of ATP are released here. Released, okay? Then this further goes in the process of fermentation. There is anaerobic bacteria and yeast. Actually, both do not have the same kind of process. Here alcohol fermentation takes place, whereas here lactic acid fermentation takes place. Alright, and here the end product is 2 lactic acid, whereas here 2 ethanol plus 2 CO2. You may be asked to differentiate between respiration and combustion. So the very first thing we would like to talk about, the first difference is the speed. This is actually a fast process, whereas respiration is a slow process. So for the same you can say that it is stepwise. Stepwise. It occurs stepwise and combustion occurs in one step. So this is your first difference. Next is energy. Yes. So stored as ATP, whereas here it is released in the form of heat and light. Alright, now third difference, enzymes. What do you think? Enzymes are used in respiration or they are used in combustion? Enzymes are actually used in respirations, and in combustion enzymes are not used. Is light released in this? No, it is not. So it is a biochemical process. Biochemical process. Whereas here the light and heat and light are released, right? So it will be a photochemical process. Photo means light. Now, is heat required? Too much heat required for respiration? No, not too much. It may occur at the body temperature also. Alright, so it usually occurs at the body temperature, whereas for combustion you will require ignition temperature. So this is the difference between these both. Let us move further to the difference between photosynthesis and respiration. Okay, so on the board you can see 2 different reactions. Okay, now I want you to make out which one is of respiration. यहाँ बताइए कि यहाँ पे कौन सा respiration का equation है. Exactly this one, जिसमें ग्लूकोज के साथ ऑक्सीजन का इस्तेमाल हो रहा है, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड और वाटर फॉर्म करेगा. क्या ये कंप्लीट है? जी नहीं, ये कंप्लीट नहीं है, क्योंकि जब तक एनर्जी फॉर्म नहीं होगा देन इट इज इनकम्प्लीट. ऑलराइट, first reaction, can you make out which reaction it is? It is actually the reaction for photosynthesis. Like, based on these 2 reactions we are supposed to find out the difference between them. Okay, first of all let us see the components used here. The first one is on the reactant side, CO2 and oxygen. Okay, so in photosynthesis, CO2 is used, is not it? Whereas in respiration, O2 is used. Still, one thing that you will notice that here energy is required, means energy plus carbon dioxide plus water forms glucose plus oxygen. So in respiration you can write second point as energy is released. And always remember, it's stored in the form of ATP. Here you can say that energy is used. Okay, so you can call this same thing in a different manner. Means what? You know that the process in which energy is released, this process is called catabolic process, isn't it? Anabolic. When energy is used, it is actually anabolic process. Next is, when does respiration occur? Yes, throughout the day, throughout the night, every time respiration occurs. But photosynthesis requires the presence of sunlight. Alright, you have seen that respiration may occur in every cell. We already talked about this, okay? So respiration occurs in all the cells, whereas here photosynthesis occurs in only those cells which have chlorophyll, isn't it? Now let us move further. So anaerobic respiration, here aerobic respiration, when oxygen is present they respire aerobically, when oxygen is absent then they respire anaerobically. The next point of difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration is that in aerobic respiration the complete breakdown of glucose takes place, and in anaerobic respiration, the incomplete breakdown of glucose takes place. The third point, carbon dioxide and water are the end products, while just opposite to this, the carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol are produced in anaerobic respiration, or say they are the end products. The fourth point, cytoplasm and mitochondria are the places where aerobic respiration takes place, and anaerobic respiration takes place only in the cytoplasm. But from where does that O2 come? From where? So if this is your plant, it has various leaves, and if you zoom, you will see various kinds of this kind of structure. Somewhere out there, the guard cells of stomata. So you must have learned this fact that from stomata, or say through stomata only, gases exchange takes place. Right? So through here, gases go inside, come outside. Now this is about the plants. What happens with the trees? In the trees have bark, where you'd see there are tiny openings on the bark, and they are the lenticels, and through this the exchange of gases takes place. The structure is somewhat like this. This is a kind of movement of air, even it comes. So at this spot it's somewhat like this. Now we have seen the leaf and lenticel. You know that roots also do exchange of gases. When it is about roots, you have very small pneumatophores, okay? So these are the places to which the roots respire. Now let us perform this experiment. First of all, take a test tube and fill it with mercury. At the bottom, keep some germinating seeds. After that, turn the tube as shown here. Now, Within some hours, you will see the difference. Seeds here will actually respire and they will produce carbon dioxide, due to which the mercury level here will actually decrease. It will fall. Okay? So the mercury level will fall so much that this much would be its height, and these are your germinating seeds. And alright, now here we have CO2. There may be several questions like what is the aim of the experiment? It shows that CO2 is actually liberated during anaerobic respiration. For this, you can be even asked to write the equation the same as aerobic respiration. Alright, you may be even asked, what is a control setup? What is a control setup? This is actually the control setup. It is just an example. Let us mention this is colored water for suppose. Alright, next one, this is tube 1. This is tube 2. Next we can say that this is KOH solution, means potassium hydroxide. And these are boiled peas, which are soaked in disinfectant so that the bacteria, or say the anaerobic respiration by bacteria, cannot take place and CO2 will not be performed. Next, on this side we have germinating seeds, that will germinate and produce CO2, germinating seeds. Here also we have the same KOH solution. What is the function of KOH solution? KOH solution is used to trap, or say that it is used for collecting the carbon dioxide. Here we have flask 1, or say flask 2 at this side, and we have here flask 1. Okay, so this is just a kind of.
Now let us see another experiment. Here we have 4 bottles that are airtight and labeled as A, B, C and D. In A bottle there is soda lime, in B bottle there is lime water, in C bottle there are the germinating seeds, and in the D bottle the lime water is again present there. Now the soda lime in bottle A removes the carbon dioxide from incoming air. The lime water in bottle B checks if the carbon dioxide is totally removed or not. Then now the air does not contain any carbon dioxide. As soon as the air moves to bottle C from the pipe, and again from here it moves to bottle D from the pipe, what happens is the lime water in bottle D turns milky due to the presence of carbon dioxide in it. As the germinating seeds have respired and production of carbon dioxide has taken place. And this experiment is held to show that carbon dioxide is released during aerobic respiration. Let us now move further with another experiment. This experiment is held to show that plants respire. Soda lime present on the tubing removes the carbon dioxide from the incoming air, and in the flask B the lime water ensures that the carbon dioxide is no more present in the air. As the air goes to the bell jar and then next it moves to the flask A, the lime water turns milky due to the presence of carbon dioxide. That is a sign that respiration has occurred. Now one more thing to mention, whenever you do this experiment, make sure you cover your bell jar with a black cloth so that photosynthesis does not occur. Because when photosynthesis will occur, it will use carbon dioxide and the experiment will fail. In the next experiment, you will require 2 flasks, each in this shape. Fill flask A with moist seeds and flask B with dry seeds. Then insert thermometers in each of them. Using a stand, keep them in this manner. After a few hours, you will see that the temperature of flask A has risen up. This will be clearly visible in the thermometer, but in case of thermometer B, there will be no change. So it is clear that when respiration occurs, the heat is released, right? So the respiration has taken place in the moist seeds but not in the dry seeds. This clearly explains that dry seeds do not respire. Now let us see the next experiment. In this apparatus, a beaker is filled with colored water and it has been tubed to another two tubes X and Y each. In these tubes, you can see clearly that in the X tube there is germinating peas and this is supported by wire mesh. In the tube Y, there are boiled peas and they are soaked in disinfectant so that bacterial respiration does not take place, and these are also supported in the same way. In each of the tubings you can see potassium hydroxide solution kept. After few hours it is observed that the level of colored water rises in tubing 1. This happens because the aerobic respiration will require oxygen. To get the oxygen, there will be a vacuum created in tubing 1. And for getting the oxygen, what will happen that the peas will call the water. So when water will be pulled, then the level of water will increase, and when the water is colored, it is clearly visible. And how do you say that this is aerobic respiration? Because in aerobic respiration, oxygen will be required by the one who is respiring. Here, the germinating peas require it. We hope that everything is clear to you. If still you have any doubt, you can comment down below in the comment section. We would really appreciate if you would mind liking and subscribing to this channel. And even it will be helpful for you also. Thank you so much for watching the video.